Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast. Every week, a few friends get together. We chop up our ideas like various vegetables and other assorted meats, and we stir fry them together to serve to you, the paying customer. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we're here to tell you a story. If you didn't pay for this episode, please return it to your closest library. Anyone want to do a little synopsis? I'll do a synopsis.
Yeah.
So we've got kind of a tribalistic world. I think what we determined was that most of all the clans are sort of nomadic. They move around to different areas. And the opening scene is one of the characters, Greta? Yes.
Right.
She is sort of looking over the camp and thinking about the fact that they're probably going to have to move kind of soon because they're nomadic, so they don't stay in one place for too long as people start running into the camp and talk about others. She has never seen anyone other than her tribe, and the last time she heard about others was from her grandmother. Is that correct, Reed?
Great-grandmother.
Great-grandmother. Another notable point of interest is a sort of a mountain, a sort of a volcanic eruption happening.
Yeah, kind of over a long ways away across the valley.
Yeah. That's the opening scene. That's it. The magic system, which Seth introduced 2 weeks ago, is kind of a dream walking, kind of like there's a parallel world to ours, and some people have the ability to kind of walk in that place. And in some ways influence people, but also like talk from large distances away and things like that. Does that kind of represent it, Seth?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. I had, which ended up being the villain, or the kind of the dark creature. This is a creature that has invaded the world and is he's kind of a dark entity. And what he loves to do is he loves to have people compromise on the things that they consider to be most dear. So in the case of this clan, he is trying to get them to settle down, to forget the things that they were taught, to build new things, to erect houses of stone, to start agriculture, to fight and squabble with each other. And he kind of invades groups as a whole, but he also invades people's individual lives and kind of sows discontent and various forms like that. On one hand, people see him, when he appears to them, he appears as like a beautiful angel, and he brings them great gifts like fire and sort of knowledge about the earth or the ideas of architecture, not architecture, agriculture, right? Sort of coercing them to move out of the place that they have lived for time out of mind, the place that they sort of feel has been right for them to live, and kind of encourages them to give up on those things and embrace this change. Our hero was Reed. What was his name again, Reed?
Heavy Spear.
Heavy Spear. He's like a big natural leader, like a big hunter. He was away with the hunting party, which is those people that came into the camp. He was away with them, and he was kind of seeing the other people. There's some contention inside the camp as to what they're going to do. Some people want to sort of fortify. Some people want to just pack up and leave. Greta's in the crowd of like, let's just pack up and leave. Where Heavy Spear is he's the natural leader, but I don't know, you can disagree with me if you want, Reed, but my sense is that he's a little young and kind of inexperienced. So people do what he says, and he is very good intentioned, but he's a little bit, he's not quite like, he hasn't set his face like a flint. I'll say that.
Right.
He's learning to, but he hasn't. The wise old man is I wouldn't call him the shaman, but he's kind of like the most spiritual. What was his name again?
I don't think I gave him
I just
a name.
gave him,
Okay.
he's Greta's brother.
Right.
So he's old.
Right. About 50 years old. And he's kind of like the spiritual guy because he does a lot of the dream walking. He does a lot of that. He's kind of the most proficient at it, and he can kind of pass into that, and he does that because one of the things is that this dream is a bit like a spiritual realm. These beings can actually be seen like for their true selves. And so this man spends a lot of time going around the village, kind of going into this dream place and fighting off and defending these things. And in it, he has, is it just in the dream, Seth, or is it outside the dream as well that he has the dog?
Just in the dream.
So in
Well, yeah, the dog was his old dog, Blue, a guard dog, but he had died.
Right.
But he's
Right.
still alive in the dream world.
Right. And so he meets up with Blue and they go into the dream. He meets up with Blue when he goes into the dream and they sort of fight off some of the influence that this dark being is trying to influence. I had last week reoccurring character, which I went all the way back to the Top Hats of Destiny, which if you guys have listened to that episode, you'll know is about a top hat that is possessed by a very powerful being. This being ends up being very bad and leads the character in that story on all sorts of terrible hijinks. But in this story, he's not possessing an object. I have the feeling that this is kind of closer to his home. And so he's coming in here to sort of, this story happens before Top Hat of Destiny. And so this is where, in my mind, this is at the end of this story, he will be casted out of this place. And that is where he's casted into is the Top Hat of Destiny story.
Yeah.
And he's just a malevolent being of wickedness and cruelty, selfishness. Just he has the idea that he wants to order the world according to his own will, without any regard to the agency, the life, the prosperity, the happiness of anyone else besides himself. So that's the reoccurring character. Did I miss anything, Reed?
No, it's sounding pretty good. I know that after encountering the others, Heavy Spear had sent a courier back to the camp to tell everybody to pack up to go to the north camp up in the hills. And but there's a dream walker there that has counseled them to stay put. So that was where we'd kind of left it.
Yeah, there's some contention in the camp as to like, do we want to start erecting barricades? You know, what do we do? And so there's like a lot of division in the camp. And I just have this picture that Heavy Spear is like, okay, I sent the courier. As soon as we arrive, we'll be able to go. And then he arrives and, you know, it's like when you say, hey, what time I'm helping you move. What time are we going? Let's get at it right away in the morning. And the person says, yeah, let's get at it right away in the morning. And then you say, what time? And they say, oh, I don't know, 11 or 12. And you're like, oh, I thought we were going to go. I thought we were going to do it right now. That's kind of the feeling that I've felt sometimes when that stuff has happened. So what story elements did you guys have for this week?
I have happy ending.
I have wild card.
Well, that's a relief, Reed. I'm so excited that it's going to be a happy ending. You have wild card? Perfect. I have unique artifact. One other thing I was thinking about with this story is that I remember saying in either the last episode or the one before that I really have these like feelings. I feel like this is a creation story. So if you're at all familiar with the Christian Bible, then you know about Adam and Eve and the serpent, and you've probably picked up on the fact that all three of us here believe in Christ and are, you know, living according to his will. But I was just thinking about the, what's the middle book in the space trilogy by?
Paralandra.
Yeah.
Right? It's a book by C.S. Lewis. It's a space trilogy. And in the middle book, a guy goes to a planet with a creation story. And it's similar, but totally different than the creation story that's in the Christian Bible. And I sort of feel like this is the creation story of this world, right? That these people were made or placed on this planet and given sort of a task to do, you know, and they weren't really supposed to come in contact with each other, at least not yet. And then this being has come and has kind of orchestrated it so that groups of people start to meet each other. He's just trying to totally, completely throw off the plan of whatever being that set this whole thing up. Are you guys able to get on that vibe with me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to introduce my unique artifact then, which is a flaming sword. On that thought, it's a flaming sword. So this is a sword that this is an item that every single clan has some kind of distant understanding of. You typically don't see it in the waking world. Every single clan has dreamwalkers, so every single clan has, has people who have walked the dream and therefore have experienced the flaming sword. And this flaming sword moves around by itself. It's a standard sort of, if you think like a Middle Ages kind of broadsword. So a one-handed broadsword, crossguard, pommel, think King Arthur, think Monty Python, you got it, right? Think Sword in the Stone, just like that. Except for the fact that it's flaming, So, and it moves around by itself. It goes to and fro. So sometimes it'll move sort of like be moving north to west, and it'll just look like a shooting star. Sometimes it will sort of be off in the distance, and you'll see it. And some people, like our wise old man in this village, knows because he's told people about it. But he's one of the people who have actually gotten like seriously close to it. And that is when he tried to go to the mountain that's currently erupting, right? So whenever you get close to the mountain in the dream, the flaming sword is there and stops you from getting close. I don't know why. This is my idea. No, I don't have an idea. I'm saying I don't know why. Everything I've just said is my idea. But at some point in time, my brain tells me that at some point in time when humanity is supposed to sort of move up to the next stage, right? When they've lived enough as they are and at the appropriate time, according to their creator, it's time to move up, then the flaming sword will come out of this spiritual, ethereal place and move into reality. This is a thing that people have felt, This is a thing that the old man believes. There's no real concept of kings or monarchs or even warlords, but this is a thing that he believes. And so he is constantly, he swears, but the only swear he says is by the sword.
By the sword.
And he does it sounds weird. Like if you imagine it's a word that has no reference for anything. By the sword. He knows what it is because that's just kind of a result of being in the dream world is you just kind of intuit things, and he feels like, so maybe it's like a prophecy as well. So he feels like at some point it's going to come out and then it's going to be used for some great and terrible purpose, but he doesn't know when or how. So that's my element. Seth, did you choose a thing for wild card?
Yes, I have wild card, and for wild card, I have chosen villain sidekick.
Oh, nice.
So in the idea of like the dream world or the telethonriod or whatever.
Telethonriod from like Wheel of Time.
Telethonriod from Wheel of Time, which is a lot like what it is. You have our villain, and as you said, he kind of appears as that angel of light, right?
Right.
It's reasonable to harbor this, resentment for someone. It's reasonable to, find security in, leaving this path that you've always walked. It's right. Reason, good. Think about how much, food you'll have. No one would starve if you, stayed here and grew crops like this.
Right.
Right. And so it's like it's the deception. His sidekick, however, is playing the opposite side of that, right? And so is inserting himself as something that these dreamwalkers interact with, and they'll see it, but they'll normally see it as an evil thing, right? Fear, and kind of plays into the opposite side. So a lot of times when you get into something, if it looks good, it must be good. But obviously this looks bad, right? And so these things are bad. And here this other guy is offering this good thing.
Oh, I see.
And so it plays the villain up as a greater thing because you have, no one's going to listen to that dark entity that, is always hiding in, the darker parts of the trees at their last, thing that comes in and gives a vision that, it comes in and, kills all the women and children or, scares all the gain
Right.
away. If they, you know, and they, right, it puts in the seeds of, well, if you're moving around and, you know, doing these things, you know, who knows what might be in the woods, what's going to be in the water, you know, you might not catch fish here, you know, you might, right?
Right.
And so inserts those ideas that continuing to do this or to do these things is a, well, obviously this is something kind of bad, right? And we got to fight that. And so
Right.
it plays in, you know, to the other side. So if they're in there, it's part of the deception. And it's, I would say, not so much like a particular entity, but manifests itself in, you know, that fear of the unknown. You know, sometimes it's you know, a wolf, sometimes it's, you know, a predator, or it's, you know, others that, you know, could take their hunting ground or murder their people if they're, you know, out hunting all the time. Who's protecting the, right? And so instilling either ideas of the fear or stuff that hedges these people towards this more bright, reasonable, good looking.
Right. That you know
Yeah,
what that you know what that makes me think of? That makes me think of in the Silmarillion, which is the history of Lord of the Rings. It talks about how when humans were first awakened on the earth, that Morgoth came and there was no sun at that time, and he came and gave them a fear of the dark.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Where if he hadn't, they wouldn't have feared the dark.
Yeah.
But something came and gave them that fear of the dark. That's kind of what I was thinking of.
Things that go bump in the night.
Right.
Wow. That's an
Yeah.
interesting idea.
Yeah. I like that. So they're kind of playing off of each other, both of them to terrible ends, but in one the sidekick playing off of and pushing the people towards the other entity. So that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, wasn't Top Hat of Destiny in the original thing actually a villain sidekick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The villain was like a pirate and he'd wear the top hat.
Yeah.
So hopefully this means he'll be much reduced because he's kind of the main bad guy here.
Well, and he's like the whole idea of the villain sidekick is him drawing attention to himself for the purpose of building up this false angel of light that has coming with promises of a great and bright future.
Right. Well, here's the thing. So we've done all this storytelling or story creating or whatever, but we don't like, so you can't have darkness without light.
Right.
Right. So what is this, the wise old man, how does he fight? Are we going to say that there are is it faith alone? Are there other entities that are working with them that are, you know, like what's the great struggle here? Or are they sort of just tasked with living sort of a life of obedience without any intervention at this, you know?
So I think part of my idea of some of this that had some of the dream thing.
Yeah.
Not to be like too personal, but like it's a partial reality that I deal with.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the times that you know, that kind of encounter, I guess you could say, plays itself out. It's always kind of a mix. Sometimes there's some physical struggle, but a lot of times, even if there's the physical struggle, is mixed with the assertion of what is right and what is true. And so when it's the deception, right? It's the calling out and then standing and calling out that thing that is not right, right?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
You know,
and so like my idea of like the dream walking, right? He's kind of going around the camp, and as some people might be being given to like, you know, a malice or bitterness or like a false idea of something, he might enter that dream world and he might have to then confront, you know, this is the lie, you know, this is untrue, you know, it has no place here. This is what's true, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, the courier had come back in the beginning scene and he said there were others and they don't look like us. And he didn't have much more to report. And you know, Greta was just taking this in the beginning scene. Well, and then toward the end of the story, last episode, we were, you know, Heavy Spear had sent a courier with a message to pack up, to head to the far hills, to the camp in the far hills that they would know about. And but there was one of the dreamwalkers there that was in the camp that began to counsel them to stay and to not go along with Heavy Spear's suggestion, and not pack up, but rather prepare to, dig
Fortify,
in.
yeah.
And so I have this picture that they're in this thing, and the angel of light is talking them, let's work together and let's cooperate and we can create this shining future. But there's also up against this sort of foreboding, this darkness, and Heavy Spear, just something doesn't set right with him, but he knows he doesn't understand it. And his desire is to, gather the crew, gather the clan, and head to a safe place, and then consult with especially the wise old man and see if he can get a better handle on what's going on. But he doesn't see a need to, just step into this right away. So, but then he comes back and meets this resistance. So there's conflict and there's confusion. But I have this, so he consults the wise old man, and he goes into the dream, and he sends Blue out on a recon to go and kind of scout in the dream world, scout out what's really going on.
Right.
So I have this picture of, Blue coming back and saying that there's this shadow, but there's something wrong with it. It isn't, it's a phony, it's not real, and it's all shadow, but part of it appears like it's not. And so there's this
I just got in my head, he comes back and he says, there are people there, but their faces have fallen.
Yes.
And then when we meet them eventually, you can just kind of tell immediately that they've kind of given over.
Oh, I got chills. Do you remember the 4th chapter of Genesis? And God says to Cain, "Why is your countenance fallen?"
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that at all.
When you do well, it is good. But when you do not do well, sin lies crouching at the door, and its desire is for you. And that word desire in English the Hebrew word has been translated as desire, but it's the same word that was used in the pronouncement of the curse when the Lord says to Eve, your desire will be for your husband, but he will rule over you. It's not a desire that is a pleasant thing. It's a desire of seeking to dominate. Just as if you do not do well, sin lies, crouching at the door, and its desire is for you. And that just hit me when you said that about their faces had fallen. Why is your countenance fallen?
Dude, that's very cool. I mean, that sounds horrifying.
It is. It's a horrifying story, and we're living it in the darkness. I'm sorry, I don't mean to go off onto, get off story here, but let's face it. One of the reasons we're telling stories is because so much evil has taken place in the world, and there's so much confusion and so many people suffering, either experiencing or causing unacceptable suffering.
Right.
And I'm sorry to be a Debbie Downer here, but in any case.
Anyways, to bring it back up, I just had this crazy idea. So the old man tells people that the sword protects the mountain, right? That's what everyone in the clan knows.
Mm-hmm.
But what he doesn't tell them is that when he goes into the dream world with the express intent of fighting these things, the sword comes to him.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say one of the same things, but I was wondering how to bring it back to this idea, because I thought, this would be like a fun thing. One of the greatest weapons that some of them have, if they know, is to make the sign of the sword.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a thing deeper. And part of his lifelong mission has been to protect the mountain in the dream world with the sword. So he has spent his entire life sort of building up, like I was asking, how does he fight? He's built his entire life sort of wielding this power that has been left to man, should they be willing to find it, to seek it, to take it, to use it. Okay, this is great. I like this story a lot.
So Go ahead.
We need to start setting it up, I think, because we've got quite a bit of gap. I don't know where the ending is going to be. Part of me wants it to end at the mountain, but part of me thinks it won't.
It won't. No, I've got an ending, but we got work to do yet.
Okay. So what happens when is it Big Spear?
Heavy Spear.
Heavy Spear. My brain was like Big Spear. That sounds kind of weird. Okay. So Heavy Spear comes back. How does this confrontation take place? So there's this other Dreamwalker who is clearly influenced. And I'd say the old man has sent Blue out to go and look. And it's this confrontation comes back when Blue comes back in the dream, tells the old man, and tells him that there's one of them in the camp.
Yeah.
And he sort of wakes up and comes, he's like sleeping by his pack and stuff because he's ready to go. Comes up and wakes up and sort of starts up and walks into this discussion that Heavy Spear is having, and like the whole clan is kind of, starting to take sides against each other.
Right.
As this one person is kind of speaking forth, and Heavy Spear is not confused. I know we had talked about, like, I'd compared him kind of to the horse in Animal Farm by George Orwell, who's like hardworking, a leader, wants to do what's right, but maybe not the smartest. I didn't want to portray him as a dullard, but he does kind of have this, like, he's too young to be taking on this entire task. But people assume that he's going to take it on because he's, 6'7", 260 pounds. He's like lean muscle. They're like, oh, of course Heavy Spear is going to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
But there's like this divide that's starting to happen. And I feel like it needs to pop off in some way.
Yes. And I believe that, he has the talk with the wise old man. And then he gathers everybody and says that one of the things that kind of shook him was that there was with all the talk of the angel of light and a new way, this new path of cooperation, there was alongside it kind of a hidden, kind of a threat. And he didn't even have the language for threat, but he likened it to a predator beast, chasing, trying to corner a prey animal because they don't have language for it. And he said that part of him had thought about like making the camp harder to get into so it would feel safer. So, and when he came home and found people arguing like that, he said something about him. He felt that he wanted to stay young and strong, and he knows he doesn't want to fight, and he doesn't want to bring spears against these others.
Right.
And he just wants to go to the hills and stay young. And that's when the wise old man said, I'm going to go to the shining being and call on the sword and go and meet them and see if I can cast the shadow out. And then he says, Blue, go to the camp, go to the camp in the far hills and see if the shadow is there. And then the Blue goes off on recon to check out the camp that they were he comes back and he said it's shining and it's bright and it's still young there. And so then a few of the faithful dreamwalkers that
our wise old man.
The wise old man trusts says, okay, let's go and cast this out of our valley. And then he talks to Heavy Spear and says, you can come with us. You can come with us into the dream world, but it's a very dangerous place and you have to do what I tell you. But when they see you, they'll think that you have come to fight them. But really, I'm just going to trick them and cast the shadow away from the mountain for a good time. And so I have this picture of this kind of a sly battle that actually avoids combat and strips the darkness from the villain sidekick and casts it out, and then the shadow appears as it really is, even over the bright and shining being, and then they come back and I see I see the ending headed toward the family is marching to the far camp.
Right.
But there's some sadness because some have decided to stay behind and mingle with the others in the valley.
Right. And then I like it. And then a prologue from that point on to remind them of the victory and to remind them of the what it is they believe in. They started to they would carve out of wood and wear signs of the sword.
Oh man, yeah. The Order of the Flaming Sword.
And write it on their tents and carve it into trees to show the way.
And as a sign of remembrance, so that and set a festival day at harvest time each year, so that our children will remember.
Yeah, like 12 stones.
Like 12 stones.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better. I'd say close to the best we've ever made. If you have any comments about this, if you have any cool suggestions, if you have any awesome ideas for the future, let us know. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or message us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We are happy to answer any questions and any complaints, field any issues, and talk to you more about these ideas. Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Bye.